Picture this. I'm standing at the edge of a memory, the kind that feels like a fever dream, where the heat of the desert sun mixes with the electric hum of a city that never sleeps. My name's Taylor, 34 years old, and I've been navigating life's twists and turns with Ryan, my husband of 8 years. We're not strangers to each other, not by a long shot, but lately, there's been this quiet drift, like two boats tied together but floating just a little too far apart. So, when the idea of a weekend in Las Vegas came up, it felt like a lifeline, a chance to shake off the dust of routine, and maybe, just maybe, find that old spark again. Las Vegas. Even saying the name out loud feels like rolling dice. The city is a beast of its own, a glittering mirage in the middle of nowhere, promising everything and nothing all at once. As we drove in, the strip unfolded before us like a neon fever, a chaotic symphony of flashing signs, towering hotels, and people spilling out onto the sidewalks with drinks in hand and dreams in their eyes. The air was thick with the scent of cigarette smoke and cheap perfume, a cocktail of desperation and thrill that clung to your skin. Inside the casinos, the clinking of slot machines was relentless, a metallic heartbeat that pulsed through every corner of this place. It was escapism in its purest form, a city built on the idea that you could be anyone for a night, or lose everything trying. Ryan was in his element from the moment we crossed the city limits. He's always been the kind of man who thrives on calculated risks, the kind who can read a poker table like it's a book he's memorized. At 36, he still has this boyish grin that crinkles the corners of his eyes, a grin that used to make my heart skip but now just feels familiar. Kind, dependable Ryan, with his steady hands and quiet confidence. He was already mapping out which casinos to hit, which tables might be hot. I could see the excitement in him, the way his fingers tapped restlessly on the steering wheel as we pulled up to our hotel. Me? I wasn't so sure what I was chasing here. There's this restlessness in me, a gnawing feeling I can't name, like I'm waiting for something to happen, something to break the surface of our comfortable, predictable life. Our hotel was a sleek, modern tower of glass and steel, the kind of place that screams luxury, but feels oddly impersonal. Checking in, I couldn't help but notice the way the lobby buzzed with people. Tourists, high rollers, and folks who looked like they'd been up for days, chasing a win that never came. We got our key cards, and as we rode the elevator up to our room, I caught a glimpse of the city through a massive window. It was breathtaking, a sea of lights stretching out into the dark desert beyond. Our room was on a high floor, with a view that made my breath catch for just a moment before the doors slid open. That first morning in Vegas, after a quick breakfast of overpriced coffee and pastries in the hotel cafe, Ryan and I stepped out onto the strip, hand in hand, like we were newlyweds again. The sun was already blazing, reflecting off the towering facades of hotels that looked like they'd been plucked from different corners of the world and dropped here in the desert. There was the faux Eiffel Tower piercing the sky, a replica of the Venetian canals complete with gondolas gliding through, and the pyramid of the Luxor casting a surreal shadow. It was all so over the top, so absurdly larger than life, that I couldn't help but laugh as we wandered through the chaos. We stopped to watch a street performer juggling flaming batons, his face painted like a clown, drawing a crowd of tourists who clapped and cheered with every toss. Ryan squeezed my hand, his chuckle warm in my ear. And for a moment, it felt like we were on the same wavelength, caught up in the ridiculous magic of this place. We snapped selfies in front of the Bellagio fountains, the water dancing in synchronized bursts to some orchestral tune I couldn't quite place. My hair kept getting in my face from the breeze, and Ryan brushed it back with a tenderness that made my chest ache just a little. But even as we smiled for the camera, there were these silences between us, longer than they used to be, filled with unspoken things. I'd catch him looking off into the distance, his thoughts somewhere I couldn't follow, and my own smiles felt a bit forced, like I was playing a part I wasn't sure I remembered the lines to. At one point, as we strolled past a row of outdoor bars, Ryan insisted on buying me a frozen margarita from a stand shaped like a giant cactus. The thing was comically huge, served in a plastic cup the size of a small bucket, neon green, and so cold it made my teeth hurt. He teased me mercilessly when I couldn't finish it. Calling me a lightweight with that playful glint in his eye, I rolled my eyes, shoving the cup back at him, but I couldn't help but laugh too. Still, as the day wore on, those little moments of connection felt like islands in a sea of quiet, and I wondered if he noticed it as much as I did. As the sun dipped low and the strip began to glow with 1,000 shades of neon, we made our way back to the hotel. Our feet aching from hours of walking, Ryan was buzzing with energy, already talking about the night ahead as we stepped into our room. He changed into a crisp white shirt, rolling up the sleeves just so, his eyes bright with anticipation for the casino downstairs. I could see how much he was looking forward to the roulette table, the thrill of the spin, the chance to outsmart the odds. He asked if I wanted to join him, but I hesitated. Something in me craved a different kind of escape, a quieter one. So instead of following Ryan down to the noisy casino floor, I told him I'd catch up later, that I just needed a moment to unwind. He gave me a quick kiss on the forehead, his mind already halfway to the roulette wheel, and then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. I stood there in the silence of our room for a minute, the hum of the air conditioning the only sound, before deciding I couldn't stay cooped up. I needed air, space, something to shake off this restless weight in my chest. That's when I remembered the rooftop pool bar I'd seen on the hotel brochure, a sleek, open-air spot promising killer views and overpriced cocktails perfect. I slipped into a light sundress, the kind that flutters just above the knees, and grabbed my keycard. The elevator ride up felt like an ascent into another world, the mirrored walls reflecting my own uncertain expression back at me. When the doors opened, I stepped out into a scene straight out of a movie. The rooftop was alive with a sultry kind of energy, neon lights casting a pink and blue glow over everything, reflecting in the glassy surface of the pool. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of chlorine and the faint tang of summer heat still lingering from the day. Silhouettes of other guests moved through the half-darkness, their laughter and murmurs blending with the soft thrum of music pulsing from hidden speakers. It was intoxicating, like stepping into a dream where the rules of reality didn't quite apply. I made my way to the bar, a polished slab of black marble tucked under a canopy of string lights, and that's when I saw her. Zoe. She was behind the counter, moving with this effortless grace that caught my eye before I even realized I was staring. Her hair was short and tousled, dyed a deep indigo that shimmered under the lights, and a delicate tattoo of a crescent moon peeked out from under the strap of her black tank top, resting on her shoulder like a secret. Her gaze, when it met mine, was calm and cool. But there was something in it, something that felt like she could see right through me, past the polite smiles and small talk, straight to the mess of thoughts I couldn't untangle. My breath hitched, just for a second, as I slid onto a bar stool. I ordered a drink, something simple, a gin and tonic, just to have a reason to stay there. Her voice, when she spoke, was low and smooth, like velvet, each word deliberate as she confirmed my order. I watched, almost mesmerized, as she mixed it with a precision that felt hypnotic. Her hands steady, the clink of ice against glass, a small, sharp sound in the haze of the night. She slid the drink across to me, her fingers brushing the edge of the counter, and I mumbled a thanks, suddenly hyper-aware of how close I was sitting, how the air between us seemed to hum with something I couldn't name. I took a sip, the cold bite of the drink grounding me for a moment, but my eyes kept drifting back to her as she worked, serving other guests with that same quiet intensity. The night deepened, the pool area slowly emptying, as people drifted back to their rooms or down to the chaos of the strip below. I lingered, long after my glass was empty, finding excuses to keep talking, asking about the best spots in Vegas, if she'd lived here long, anything to hear that voice again. Each exchange felt charged, like there was a current running beneath our words, something unspoken but heavy. Zoe didn't seem to mind my stalling. If anything, her half-smile suggested she knew exactly why I was still there, perched on that stool, like I had nowhere else to be, and maybe I didn't. Not right then. When the last of the guests trickled out and the bar officially closed, I offered to help her stack the chairs, a flimsy excuse to stay a little longer. She raised an eyebrow but didn't say no, and we worked side by side under the neon glow, the city sprawling out below us like a carpet of stars. The tension was a living thing now, coiling tighter with every brush of our hands as we moved the chairs, every accidental touch sending a jolt through me that I couldn't ignore. And then, in a moment that felt both inevitable and reckless, something shifted. We stood too close, the silence between us no longer just heavy, but suffocating. And before I could think better of it, I let myself cross a line I never thought I would. It wasn't just a fleeting thought or a harmless flirtation anymore. It was real, raw, and wrong. When it was over, when the rush of adrenaline faded, I was left standing there by the pool, my heart pounding in my chest like I'd just run a marathon, my mind reeling with what I'd done. Zoe stepped back, her expression a mask I couldn't read, her eyes avoiding mine as she adjusted the strap of her tank top. The neon lights reflected off the water, casting flickering shadows across her face, making it impossible to guess what she was thinking. She murmured something about needing to finish closing up, her voice quieter than before, almost distant, like she was already pulling away from whatever had just happened. I nodded, though I'm not sure she even saw it, and watched as she turned to gather the last of the bar supplies, her movements mechanical now, devoid of the effortless grace I'd been so drawn to earlier. I stood there, frozen, as she disappeared around the corner, leaving me alone with the empty pool and the hum of the city far below. The neon reflections on the water, once so mesmerizing, now felt cold, mocking, like they were laughing at my stupidity. I wrapped my arms around myself, the night air suddenly biting against my skin, and tried to make sense of the storm inside me. How had I let this happen? How had I gone from feeling restless to throwing away everything I'd promised to protect? My mind spiraled, dragging me down into a pit of guilt so deep I could barely breathe. I thought of Ryan, his trusting smile, the way he'd squeezed my hand earlier that day as we watched the fountains, the life we'd built together over 8 years. 8 years of shared mornings, late-night talks, and quiet compromises. And in one reckless moment, I'd betrayed all of it for something I couldn't even define, a fleeting pull towards someone I barely knew. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the water, letting the weight of my actions crush me. Eventually, I forced my feet to move, leaving the rooftop behind and stepping into the elevator. The mirrored walls showed me a stranger, my face pale, my eyes wide and haunted, my lips pressed into a thin line as if holding back a scream. The hallway lights on my floor were too bright, glaring down at me like they could see every secret I was carrying. I fumbled with my keycard, my hands trembling as I let myself into our hotel room. The space felt suffocating now, the view of the strip through the window no longer breathtaking, but a reminder of the chaos I'd invited into my life. I slipped out of my sundress, the fabric feeling like a weight I couldn't bear, and crawled into bed. The sheets were cool against my skin, a stark contrast to the heat still lingering in my chest, and I pulled the covers over me like they could hide me from myself. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with 1,000 what-ifs. What if I hadn't gone to the rooftop? What if I'd joined Ryan at the casino instead? What if I'd walked away when I first felt that pull toward Zoe? But I hadn't. I'd stayed. I'd chosen. And now I was left with the wreckage of that choice. Hours passed, though it felt like an eternity, before I heard the soft click of the door opening. Ryan's footsteps were light, careful, as if he didn't want to wake me. I kept my eyes closed, my body still, pretending to sleep as he moved through the room. His voice came in a cheerful whisper, laced with that boyish excitement I knew so well, as he muttered something about a small win at the blackjack table, a couple $100 he'd tucked away for a nice dinner tomorrow. He had no idea, no clue about the storm raging inside me as I lay there, pretending to be asleep. The sound of Ryan's voice, so full of innocent joy, sliced through me like a knife. I wanted to open my eyes, to reach out, to tell him everything right then and there. But the words were lodged in my throat, heavy and immovable. Instead, I stayed still, listening as he shuffled around the room, the rustle of his clothes, the soft thud of his shoes hitting the floor, each sound a reminder of the normalcy I'd shattered. Eventually, the bed dipped as he slid in beside me, his breathing slow and even, completely unaware of the betrayal lying just inches away. I didn't sleep a wink that night, my mind a battlefield of guilt and dread, replaying every moment from the rooftop, every choice that led me to this unbearable point. The next morning, I woke to the faint sound of Ryan humming under his breath, some old tune I couldn't place but recognized from happier times. The sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting golden streaks across the room, and for a split second, it almost felt like any other day. But then, the weight of last night crashed back over me, a suffocating wave that made my chest tighten. I turned my head slightly, seeing Ryan already up, standing by the window with a cup of coffee in his hand, gazing out at the strip with a contented smile. He looked so at ease, so unaware, planning our day with an enthusiasm that made my stomach churn. "Hey, sleepyhead," he called out, his voice warm. "I was thinking we could hit that famous brunch spot down by the Bellagio. They've got these insane waffles, apparently, and maybe catch a show tonight, Cirque du Soleil, if we can snag tickets. What do you think?" Each word was a brick added to the wall of guilt building inside me, his normalcy a stark contrast to the chaos I was drowning in. I forced a smile, mumbling something about that sounding great, but my voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. I dragged myself out of bed, every movement feeling like wading through quicksand, and joined him at the small table by the window, where room service had left a tray of coffee and croissants. My hands trembled as I poured myself a cup, the porcelain clinking against the saucer. A small, betraying sound in the quiet room. Ryan didn't seem to notice, too caught up in scrolling through his phone for brunch reviews. But I felt like every shaky breath I took was screaming my secret. I sipped the coffee, the bitter taste doing nothing to steady me, and tried to respond to his chatter with nods and short answers. "Yeah, sounds good," I'd say. Or, "Sure, why not?" But each reply felt like a lie, clipped and forced, as if I were reading from a script I hadn't rehearsed. My eyes kept darting to his face, searching for any sign that he suspected something, but there was nothing, just that same familiar grin, the one that used to feel like home, but now felt like a judgment I couldn't escape. The longer we sat there, the more unbearable it became. The weight of what I'd done was a physical thing, pressing down on my shoulders, squeezing the air from my lungs. I couldn't keep pretending, couldn't keep sitting across from him with this secret festering inside me like a poison. I needed to let it out, to lay it bare, even if it meant destroying everything. So, in a moment of raw, desperate vulnerability, I just blurted it out. Right there, over half-eaten croissants and lukewarm coffee, I shattered the fragile peace of our morning. "Ryan, I need to tell you something," I started, my voice cracking on the words. He looked up, his brow furrowing slightly, that easy smile still lingering, as if he thought I was about to confess to something trivial, like overspending on a souvenir. But then I kept going, the words spilling out in a messy, unstoppable rush. I told him about meeting Zoe at the rooftop bar, about the inexplicable connection I felt, about the night that unfolded in a way I never intended. I didn't spare the details as they tumbled out of me, each one heavier than the last, like stones dropping into a still pond, sending ripples of devastation through the air between us. Ryan's face changed as I spoke, the warmth draining from his eyes, replaced by a cold, hard disbelief that cut me deeper than any words could. His jaw tightened, his hands stilled on the table, and when I finally stopped, choking on my own shame, the silence that followed was deafening. He didn't yell, didn't lash out. He just stared at me, as if seeing me for the first time, and then, in a voice so quiet it barely reached me, he said, "I need to get out of here." He stood, grabbed his jacket, and walked out of the room without looking back. The door slammed shut with a finality that echoed in my bones, leaving me alone with the wreckage of my confession. Hours passed after Ryan left, though time seemed to stretch and warp in that sterile hotel room. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, staring at the untouched breakfast plates on the table. The croissant sat there, cold and crumbling, a sad reminder of the morning that had started with such innocent promise. The coffee had gone stale in its pot, the steam long since vanished. Much like the fragile hope I'd clung to before everything unraveled, I couldn't move, couldn't think beyond the loop of memories playing in my mind. Every moment of this trip flashed before me like a cruel highlight reel. The way Ryan's hand felt in mine as we walked the strip, the laughter over that ridiculous margarita, the excitement in his voice as he planned our day. And then, the stark contrast of the rooftop, the neon glow, Zoe's unreadable eyes, and the reckless choice that shattered it all. I replayed every word of my confession, every shift in Ryan's expression, wondering if there was a different way I could have said it, a way that might have softened the blow. But deep down, I knew there wasn't. The truth, no matter how it was delivered, was a blade, and I'd wielded it with trembling hands. The room felt smaller with each passing minute, the walls closing in as the hum of the air conditioning became a relentless drone in my ears. I glanced at my phone, hoping for something, anything, from Ryan. But the screen remained dark, mocking my desperation. Then, around midday, it buzzed, and my heart leapt into my throat. It was a text from him, short and sharp, each word like a splinter under my skin. Booked a separate flight home. Need space to think. Don't contact me. I read it over and over, my vision blurring with unshed tears until the letters seemed to dance on the screen. Space. That word lingered, vast and empty, a chasm I wasn't sure I could ever bridge. I wanted to reply, to beg, to explain. But my fingers hovered uselessly over the keyboard before I set the phone down. He'd asked for space, and the least I could do was respect that, even if it tore me apart. I thought about going back to the rooftop, to the pool bar, to see if Zoe was there. Maybe I was looking for answers, or maybe just a distraction from the hollow ache in my chest. After mustering what little courage I had left, I took the elevator up, my stomach churning with a mix of dread and longing. But when I stepped out into the now familiar space, the bar was quiet. Staffed by a different bartender, a guy with a bored expression who barely looked up as I lingered near the counter. Zoe's shift must have ended, or maybe she'd taken the day off. I'd never know. I stood there for a moment, staring at the spot where we'd stacked chairs under the neon lights, where I'd let myself fall into something I couldn't control. Was she just a fleeting escape, a momentary lapse in a life I'd thought was steady? Or was there something more, something I'd never get the chance to understand? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but there was no one to ask. No closure to be found in that empty space. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.